Joining me right now with more on its impact is Peter Navarro. He is White House Trade Advisor. And Peter, it's always a pleasure to see you. Thank you for being here.
Good morning, Maria.
What kind of an economic impact are you expecting from this coronavirus? And I want to ask you about what the U.S. is relying on from China, because I know that there were plenty of ships that were supposed to be carrying medical equipment, medical supplies, parts, components, which now the U.S. is not getting because China is holding on to those things, or they can't even produce them.
Yeah. Maria, my job at the White House during this crisis is to review the supply chains we need to treat corona. There's over 30 different elements just for that alone. And what I've learned so far, and not surprisingly, is that we've offshored far too much of our supply chain, not just for corona, but also for the essential medicines we need. Same reasons we offshored a lot of our other stuff. It's cheap labor, environment, lax environment, and most of all, unfair trade practices. A lot of it's in China, some of it's in India, some of it's in Europe. But we got to get that back on shore. In terms of the immediate issue, face masks, the N95 face masks, China put export restrictions on those masks and then nationalized an American factory that produces them there. So we're dealing with that in Trump time. This week we're going to be sending out an RFP to make sure we got plenty of those. We have to look across 4 different elements. It's the protective gear like the face masks. It's the treatment drugs like remdesivir that we're trying to get into clinical trials quickly. It's the vaccine development, which we're moving in Trump time. We're going to be able to possibly get a vaccine in half the time it usually takes. And there's also these point-of-care diagnostics so that we can accurately determine whether a patient has corona and doesn't have to come to the hospital. So bottom line, Maria, is that this administration is moving as rapidly as possible, and my part of the portfolio is to make sure our supply chains are secure and we have what we need.
Well, you make a lot of important points, and I know that the president has been trying to get the supply chains back to North America, get the manufacturing base of our country out of places like China, or lessen them at least, so that we don't have to be reliant on these things. But what's the impact on the economy? I mean, if we are going to see all these shortages, isn't that going to cut into earnings? Are you expecting a significant impact on growth, Peter?
Yeah, let me say one last point on the supply chain issue. For the American people, they need to understand that in crises like this, we have no allies. Back in 2009, during the swine flu problem, our best friends in Australia, Great Britain, and Canada basically denied us what we needed. Australia refused to send 35 million doses of vaccine. With respect to the economic impacts, Maria, I think what we've learned with President Trump's tough stand on China is that the American economy is exceedingly strong and not particularly vulnerable to what happens in China. So we're going to go about our business and try to get what we need in Trump time.
Okay, we're going to take a short break. You have an op-ed out in the Financial Times, which you want to talk about, and you did a blitz in terms of the counterfeit products coming from China. We've got to talk about that as well, Peter.